we're now going to have the questions and answers, and I'm going to ask David and Conor and Ciara O'Callaghan from Ornua, the Global Strategy Manager, and Pat Whelan, how could I forget Pat, to come up to the chairs up here, is that right? Yeah. Now I'm going to ask Ciara to talk a little bit about Ornua, which we know from a brand perspective better as Kerrygold, and Pat then to talk a little bit about his extraordinary growth from a butcher's outlet in Tipperary to a very, very dominant brand in the Irish market. So Orna, Ciara, if you could just talk a little bit about it.
Absolutely. Ornua, I think most of you will be more familiar with our previous name, the Irish Dairy Board. We are a commercial cooperative that sells Irish dairy product abroad for our members. We have a turnover of approximately 2.5 billion, so we're a significant business. We do that through two arms, one within the consumer food side and one on food ingredients. And really the core, I suppose, of our story is centred around the fantastic kind of farming Irish traditional story that we have to sell, and that we all know so well, and that really consumers engage with so strongly in all of our markets. We have a number of brands, some very iconic brands that you'll be familiar with, the Kerrygold brand. We also export the Dubliner brand abroad. We've Pilgrim's Choice in the UK. We've launched Eureka in the Middle East of late, and we have Bio, which is a powder brand in Africa. So,
Pat, sorry.
Okay.
I'm just looking at my note.
No problem. My name is Pat Whelan, and I own and run James Whelan Butchers, which is a traditional family business. Interestingly, the craft of butchering goes back in my family for generations. I took over the business in about 1999, and I started to grow and develop the business. The business is founded on a bedrock of a quality product. And in 2004, I started to take the business online and reach out to more consumers, becoming Ireland's first online butcher. And at the time, we were probably way ahead of our time, but we were starting to develop relationships with people who had specific interest in what we were doing, and particularly in rare breed meat that was produced in a very ethical way. We have grown the business substantially from 1999 to today, where we currently have 5 outlets, 3 of them in partnership here in Dublin with Evoca, a much loved Irish brand. And we celebrate the craft and art of butchery in a real and meaningful way with our consumers. Not only celebrating the craft and art, but also the skill of the people who are behind it. It's a very simple business. It's still based on that same bedrock, which is a quality product.
Thanks very much, Pat. And I think we're ready for questions. Now, Niamh's just reminded me, if you're asking a question, and don't let the sun get in your eyes when you're asking a question, if you could please just state your name and your company, so the speakers can know where you're coming from.
Hi guys, my name is Jamie Call. I'm from Lager Foods. My question's for Conor. Conor, you mentioned about sugar, obviously, and I suppose the kind of damning reports really on that, and the connection that consumers are having with your product, I suppose, and albeit incorrectly. How do you communicate that message to consumers in terms of that your product actually it isn't that processed sugar that is causing the problem?
I'm trying to stay out of that debate, to be perfectly honest, because actually, if you read general press, and if you read any paper, any standard magazine, there's enough information from really good nutritionists all over the world about why you should have fresh fruit, because it's fructose, so it's given to you in a particular way, because it's linked with fiber, and you ingest it and you take it into your body in a slow way. But I think us coming out talking about that is disingenuous. it can only be seen as coming from a disingenuous place, I think, because it's like, well, you're a vested interest. You would say that, wouldn't you? So I just think that's not our gambit. Yeah.
Anyone else? There's one over here. Yeah. Oh, sorry, there first and then here.
I'd just like to ask, Charles Smith, the Irish Angus Producer Group. I'd like to ask Pat, I'm a great admirer of his stores and the way he has handled butchery and has made meat very elegant and look very appealing. And I'd like to ask him, what's the single most important part of marketing you've done, Pat? Is it the premium that you've put beef and basically all butchered products at, or what's the single most important element that you've been involved in that has achieved what you have achieved?
I think being constantly true to your promise with your customer, being honest at all times, and communicating that value consistently and delivering on that value. There are a number of people in this space that would wear the clothes of a butcher, but not have any of the integrity that goes with it. So purporting to be one thing and delivering on another, there is no space in the world I live in for that. So being open, honest, and delivering on the promise is the key to continually developing any brand, whether it be butchering or whatever. But for me, in the world of butchery, it's about being honest around that.
And does that lead right back to the source of that product?
It would very much lead around to the source, but also to the elements of what you do, what your brand promise is about, whether it's delivering on something breed specific or delivering on whatever the promise is, but delivering on it honestly and being open about that.
Well, I think over here. Yeah.
Hi, Cal McCarthy, Clonakilty Black Pudding Company. I noticed both speakers their key target audience is young people, 36, the new mums for the fruit, and perhaps students and beyond for Domino's. One of the trends are like the aging demographic that we have in Ireland in particular. How do both of you hope to grow that area? I know my mother, for example, is the most conservative woman in the world. How are you going to encourage her to buy into both of your brands? Yes, please.
Yeah. If we start, David, you haven't. Yeah.
What we found, as I said, is that our business really started to take off in the UK and Ireland around the turn of the century with what we call the Simpsons generation. We sponsored the Simpsons, and it became a real catalyst for growth. And it was particularly popular with people who were in the sort of 13 to 17 age bracket at that time. What's been very interesting for us over the last 20 years since then is that cohort has stayed with us. So our demographic is steadily aging. So and now they've got families, and we're targeting a lot of our marketing at those families. So we're trying to top up the hopper and retain the loyalty of that generation. So as the population ages, we're very confident that our demographic will age with it. We're not specifically targeting the much older generation. We're much more concerned with topping up the hopper and retaining those customers who started the Domino's habit when we sponsored The Simpsons in the late 90s.
I think mine is a very similar kind of answer. And I think if you relate it to yourself, I don't know when I had my first strawberry, but it was only ever in summer, and it was only ever as a treat.
Given what you've been saying about strawberries, do you really want to share this with us?
Yeah, my stories don't go that far, John. Yes. But it's. I think I equate strawberries personally with going to my auntie's annual mass, when we would gather in her house and strawberries would come from somewhere and there was 20 kilos of, or 20 pounds of strawberries at the time would arrive. That would be my story and when I most had it. But the generation ahead of me at that point in time loved strawberries as much as we did, but they just saw it as a treat, not necessarily as the everyday thing that today I have every day on a bowl of porridge. It's just not quite every day. What's interesting for me is I think you generate, I don't know if I can go and change my mother's behavior entirely. Yeah, I don't know if that's possible. I'm her son and she knows what I do and she still won't buy berries every day. But what has happened with her over a period of time is she's influenced by the people around her, and she's equally going to be influenced by her grandchildren who have berries pretty much every day. And I noticed as that had happened in our family before I ever joined Keelings, she's influenced by that. So when we're around, she sort of buys them more often, and I think that will be the case. So without a shadow of a doubt, we will get to a point in time where people who are more aged will have berries every day because they'll have been doing that for their lifetime. But whether I'll ever get to change my mother is another thing. Yeah.
There's a few questions here. I just have one question for Ciara before you start. And it's really, David was talking about being ambitious, and Domino, definitely one of the most ambitious brands in the world. Kerrygold have achieved something that I don't think any other food brand has achieved in terms of an Irish brand. There's more supermarkets in the world you can go into and see Kerrygold than I suspect any other branded Irish product. What could you say about,
What about Guinness?
I said food. One track mind here. I said food. Don't worry, you'll get a drink soon. What would you say to companies out here, food companies, who are going to have to export at some stage if they're going to be really ambitious and really big?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's talking to the two presentations that the guys have given tonight, and it's really just ensuring that you are true to your brand and that you really understand how consumers are engaging in your brand in your home markets first and foremost, and then understanding, if you pick a market, what is the context that you're looking at? How are consumers relating and engaging to the brands within that particular market? And what are the pillars within your brand that you feel that you can use to capitalize on in that particular market? And really understanding the subtleties in terms of the cultural context that you're playing in, and perhaps the need to look at the local nuances and perhaps dial up your one of your brand pillars more so than the other, depending on where you're going. I mean, for example, I guess you referenced sustainability in the UK gone quiet a little bit, and that's absolutely apparent. But I guess in Germany, it's still absolutely apparent, and it's the sweet spot for our brand, and it's one that we really talk to and engage. So we would heighten the volume of our brand around that kind of messaging, in addition to our core equities around the great taste and the Meadow Milk story. So we remain absolutely true to our brand, and we are very lucky in that when we manage to connect with the consumer, we really get these fantastic ambassadors. And word of mouth is critical and absolutely key to our brand as well. So we learn as we go into each region, but really understanding the context that we're in. I mean, we looked at China. I remember going to groups in China a couple of years back and putting our Kerrygold butter on the table, and they had no idea how to interact with it. So that, from our perspective as a business, it's learning, just how big a hill do we have to climb to illustrate how consumers need to engage, not only in our brand, but in a new category, and the opportunities that gives also.
Yeah. Thanks, Ciara. It just occurs to me, looking at, I'm obviously going to leave David out of this one, but in terms of three brands up there, now I had a vague involvement with Kerrygold in the 1980s and in the German market. It was based on Irish farms. Pat Whelan, based on an Irish farm. Conor Kilduff, based on an Irish farm. It's quite interesting what's coming through in that and what resonates not just in Ireland but around the world. And I think that's your experience here, the Irish farm in Germany in particular.
Yeah.
Somebody down here.
Hello, Tony McKeever, Manor Farm. I have two questions, one for Ciara and one for Conor. Just Ciara, you launched Kerry cream liqueur into Germany, a premium product, which is predominantly with discounters. I'm just wondering how successful that particular premium product was.
Okay, well, we haven't quite launched the cream liqueur into Germany yet. We have launched it into the States. And I guess it was an ambitious innovation product to look at, but it was one that really was embedded off the back of a lot of work that we had done in order to understand exactly how consumers are engaging and what our brand stretch was and our capabilities were. And we recognized that really they were engaging in the core ingredient of our product, and the realization that really Kerrygold is all about that fantastic taste and what it brings to the dish. And beyond that, creating that indulgent moment. And when we continue to talk and engage with our consumers, we learn how that relationship is evolving, and we kind of put a number of potential concepts to them to explore how far we can go. And cream liqueur came out as one potential area of opportunity that we decided to explore further. And clearly it is a very different category, but we felt that we could leverage that core equity of superior quality and taste and use that to engage with the consumer. And interestingly, from my perspective, when I started to look at the consumers within the cream liqueur category, I realized actually there's a huge level of parallel between that kind of cohort, which is your 35-year-old female and up, really engaged in experimenting in food and in drink and very adventurous when it comes to food. So very similar to our core brand consumer and our core brand profile, and that gave us a lot of confidence in terms of understanding how to engage with those consumers and what elements of our brand we could leverage and where the frictions were and how to kind of capitalize on the benefits and I guess, as I said earlier, know where to dial down. So it's been really successful to date, and I think, what is true to our brand has to be the ingredient, and hopefully what you'll experience when you leave here is that absolutely fantastic product, and that's what we hear back regularly, thankfully, that we really are meeting their expectations around a Kerrygold brand. And importantly, I think, just to mention on that, we are very protective of our cohort, of our loyal ambassador, our loyal consumers. And one of the core requirements in everything that we did around that particular execution was to ensure that we weren't doing anything other than strengthening our brand, and that we weren't risking them having any uncertainty around what our core DNA was and our core proposition was. And that was something that we carried forward from the very beginning, just understanding, look, what is the opportunity, what is the brand fit, and how would they relate to us as a brand if we endeavour into this category? And we maintained that at the front of our mind in everything that we did. That answers your question?
Yeah, thank you. Conor, just one for yourself. You have a good strategy for your surplus strawberries on the home market. Do you have a strategy equally for your berries? For your berries, if you have surplus berries? And why do you actually, is there no room for export, or do you have to get rid of them on the home market?
I'd love to think that was possible, Tony, but we haven't gone there yet. The berries that we grow in Ireland, particularly the strawberries, are part of the reason why people love them is that they're quite a soft product. If you compare those to something that we take in from Spain, they're a much harder strawberry, and they'll air freight well and they'll travel well, and I don't think Irish strawberries would travel so well because they're softer and they take a lot of care and attention. So if we were doing that, I think we'd need to grow for the export market. It might be more important to grow in the market. I think if I was trying to figure out the right strategy in terms of that story, and like British strawberries in the UK mean a hell of a lot to the UK consumer, not Irish strawberries. I think I'm right. Yeah. And I think there's a very similar thing. I think if we went to Holland and we did the same thing, or we went to Germany or did the same thing, or we went to America and did the same thing, I think it's innately part of the reason for the success of that category, or that is that actually people have such an affinity and such emotional connection to the product that is grown in their locality. So I think we would have to have a different strategy to enter markets, maybe a more costly strategy. So, yeah.
think we have a question somewhere over there behind.
Hi, Audrey Aspel from O'Brien Fine Foods. My question is for David. So David, you spoke a lot about online ordering in your presentation, and I wanted to ask, where do you see online ordering going in the future, particularly in relation to new technology as it comes on board, and how do you think that will compare to more traditional methods such as door-to-door leaflet drops?
I think that we still send a lot of menus out. We probably send north of 300 million menus a year, which I think is probably too much. But that there's a lot of view amongst franchisees who run the stores that menus still work. And I think we're still at the stage of transitioning. I think menus will always have a role, but I think the customer experience online is so much better, because most people will have an old menu that is out of date, doesn't have the contemporary offers on, doesn't present the product in the right way. So I see online and communicating our menu offer online being much more compelling and relevant. And I think we will see less and less menu distribution. It will probably still have a role, but a significantly diminished role from that which it's had in the past. As far as online ordering is concerned, for our delivered business now, around 80% of our orders we receive online. And it's still going up. And those online customers spend more money and order more frequently. So it's an absolute win. As far as the franchisees are concerned, running the stores, it's a win for them as well, because it means they don't need people to answer the phone. It means there's no accuracy issue, because very often in a busy pizza store, people will write the order down wrong and then load it into the computer wrong. When customers order online, it goes straight down the pipe onto the make line. So there's a much bigger accuracy benefit there. So from an economic perspective and from a customer offer perspective, it's fantastic. There is still a core of people who prefer to order by phone, but as every year goes by, that number's getting smaller. I think there will always be a core that remain, but our efforts are much more to convert people online, because we think it's a better experience, it's better for the franchisees, and it's more profitable for everybody.
Any more? Yep, there's a few.
Hi, I'm Aoife McCarthy with Improper Butter. My question's for Ciara. Just because Kerrygold is such a strong brand, I was wondering if you ever plan to bring the Kerrygold liqueur to the Irish market, and if yes, does your strong brand actually hinder its progress or its success, because people instantly associate the brand with butter, and that might be the first thing that comes to their mind when they actually see the product?
Yeah, good question. I think, if you look at our brand in all our markets, and you ask a consumer what's the first thing that you think of in relation to Kerrygold, it is around butter. More so in the States, obviously cheese obviously is a key part of our portfolio there. In terms of where to next for cream liqueur, it's absolutely. I mean, the States is our lead market, and we're embedding it there, and we're learning as we go. I think the critical point is that, look, we have a fantastic equity that we're leveraging, and that we've made sure that we have drawn, that we have stayed true to our brand, to reference what Pat said earlier, and that is absolutely key. And that in any way and any route that we have taken to engage our consumers, both our existing and new potential consumers, with the brand, it remains true to the essence of the dairy brand, and there's no conflict there. And we did a deep dive into that to be very careful and to understand what, from our architecture, what we could leverage across into that category. And as I said, we had the benefit of understanding the profile of the consumer within that category. Will we come into the Irish market? We're in Dublin Airport and we're in Cork Airport, so we have our toe in the market. But as I said, we're learning as we go. I think, the benefit to the brand is significant. It's driving awareness. It's getting our brand out there. We are a big player in the States. We're on the crest of a wave. We're growing. We've gone from number 8 to number 3 brand in the butter category, number 1 imported. So, it can only establish ourselves and just enhance our brand, really. And I think, people really identify well and understand the heritage of our brand here. And we would always, I suppose, touch base with those consumers and make sure that we do have permission to enter.
Thanks, Ciara. One over here. Oh. Yeah. And I think there's one behind as well, Ciara.
Good evening. It's Paula Donoghue here from Board Bia, and I work in the Insights team, so of course I'm going to ask about insights and trends. But Pat, I was just wondering, we've heard about trends this evening around convenience, around health, kind of sugar. What trends do you think are impacting the whole meat sector at the moment? Is it still the kind of know the farmer, transparency where the meat's coming from, or has it evolved?
I think definitely the transparency issue is continual and more specifically in certain categories of meat, poultry being one of them. However, the whole health and well-being in the last number of years has come to the fore, where people are following specific dietary regimes and looking for not only specific species of meat, but also for certain meats to be prepared in a certain way, and adding convenience to that. So I would say that the consumer trend that's driving a certain amount of innovation in the category would be around health and wellness and that whole convenience piece. Yeah.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, up the back, yeah.
Dennis Kelly from Ribworld. Just a question there for David, please. You operate in 4 countries around Europe. I just wondered, could you share with us, do you have a consistent offer in each one of them, or do you have something unique for that country, or is it mix and match?
The core is common, but Ireland is similar to the UK. We do a slightly different base here to the one we do in the UK. The UK, we do a stuffed crust. We don't do that here. Our Swiss offer's different because most of the food we sell in Switzerland is produced in Switzerland because they have significant import barriers to food. So we have local is quite important in the Swiss market. As far as Germany is concerned, to be honest, it's evolving. We found Germany very difficult. We did have a wholly owned business. We've now merged with another master franchisee, and we've acquired a big German chain. So we're just in the process of evolving the offer there. The Domino's philosophy globally is to try and tailor the offer to the local market and make sure that we're sensitive to local needs rather than being dogmatic about single product specifications globally.
Thanks. I think there's one or two more. Now remember, David knows something that no one else in this room knows. So he's got one of those funny little watches. He knows exactly where Domino's pizzas are on the way. I suspect somewhere around Northumberland Road at the moment. So one or two more questions.
Hi, I'm Hugh Goff from Manor Farm. It's a question for Conor, just particularly around the key challenges between managing your private label business and your branded business, particularly around your customer insights that might be driving innovation that you're putting through your brand, and how do you manage the expectations of the private label customers for that?
There's 2 parts to our business. One part is the part that we have to understand and appreciate has allowed the company to grow in the first place, and therefore it's very important. And so in terms of pillars of our strategy, one of the pillars of our strategy is to grow brands, and one of the pillars of our strategy is to work exceptionally hard to ensure that our customer believes we're the best possible partner for them for the long term. And I don't think they're very different things. Expressly in the way in which I talked about what I think we can bring to the fresh fruit category, you can see that I think I can take a position as an own label service provider for particular categories. In fact, I think we could bring the brand into particular categories and do something for our customers, and that's my point of view, or the company's point of view. We work exceptionally hard to make sure our customers feel they're well treated, well minded, and looked after. We want to ensure that the basic delivery that we're supposed to deliver on time, in full, every day, day in, day out, is critical. We try to add value to that relationship by bringing insight, and it's a combination of those two things that will mean the own label part of our business is successful. And then it's a separate strategy around what we can bring for the brand that is on top of that, and hopefully that can deliver an improvement overall for the customer. It's a difficult situation in that, as a human being, it's much easier to just, I'm going to fall on one side or the other and do one or the other. So there is no dichotomy in your head around what am I, is this right for the brand or is this right for the customer? I think you have to put the customer first, and I think you have to put the brand first in the best way you possibly can. And to date, we've been very successful in that. I think if you ask our customers, are we looking after them? I would hope that their answer would be yes, because you have to deliver that great service. And I hope they would tell you we add value to their business. So we try very, very hard in some of the categories where the brand does not exist currently to bring fantastic new things and work very hard there. On the berries side, we're protected slightly because the cost of the berries that we like to put into our brand in some way is a bit prohibitory to some of our customers when they're trying to deal with prices that can be achievable in other, in competitive. So it protects us slightly, but it's a tightrope. You also have to do the right thing by both. But I think too many people ask me the question, well, which is more important? And I think provided I answer the customer is important and the brand is important, and I stay that road, I think I can channel people through whatever needs to be done. Yeah.
Very good answer, because that's a tricky question for an awful lot of our members. Anyone else? There's a lot of activity down there. Yes, over here. Oh, sorry, there first, and then we just take those two.
Hi, Emma Walls from Glennis. My question is for Conor, particularly in light of what Ciara said about leveraging the equity in a brand to move into other categories. You have an amazing Net Promoter Score, and you've also talked about the challenges of shelf life and margins. I mean, do you see an opportunity to move into other categories? Is that an opportunity or is it a distraction for your business?
Both. No, it's a real opportunity. But I think the job of work that had to be done first was to make sure that we embedded the thing that is really the crux of what the business is about and not get distracted. I think that's fundamental. So I would personally have resisted a lot of, well, why don't we look at and why don't we look at? I would have resisted. But I think in years to come, there will be opportunities for us to bring the brand into other areas. But we need to be careful about where will the consumer permit us to exist? Where would they expect us to be? Does that have resonance for them? Does that hurt the core product? Because if it does, we won't be doing it. So it's a very, very careful process. I heard a story about a piece of research that Levi's did many years ago to say they're going to go into gents' suits, and every single thing in the research said, don't do this. So they did, and they failed. So I think you have to go where the consumer gives you permission. Yeah.
Yep. Just third row there, yeah.
Hi, I'm Gráinne McGovern from Ornua. Question for David. I was wondering if you see kind of the emergence of fast casual and that sector a threat to Domino's, and if you have any strategy to safeguard against it.
We see it as an opportunity rather than a threat. It's growing reasonably quickly from a very small base in the US. And in fact, I'm going to the US in 2 or 3 weeks to look at a Domino's version of fast casual. I think there is an opportunity for us, and I think that with our brand, we could embrace some of the learnings from fast casual. The US business thinks it's going to stay small, but I think the right thing for us to do is to look at it more closely and potentially bring a pilot store into our marketplace.
That it? Oh yeah, sorry, question at the back there. Second.
Just to finish on a high note, Shane O'Hanrahan from Flahavans. Conor, I can see that you're a very intelligent and smart person. Is that as a direct result from all those bowls of porridge you're eating?
In case Shane and I go way back, in fact, he taught me how to be a rep, not very well, may I say. So of course it is, Shane. And I'm hoping that we'll pull together lots of porridge and lots of berries as we go forward, all right?
Thanks, Conor.
Thanks very much. Does anyone else? Final question? Yeah, in the front row.
Mairead McKeown, a librarian with Board Bia. David, just a question for you. What kind of information resources do you use to drive your strategy and stay on top of trends and developments in the food industry?
Everything, really. I mean, I talked about brand tracking. I'm always talking to people about what's going on, and you know, one of the benefits of being in a business like this, you can go in store, you can talk to colleagues in store. I mentioned the global network of knowledge. We've got a big get-together in June. We've got another one in September where all the Domino's master franchisees get together in a structured way and learn. But the most important thing is to stay close to your customer. And that's why I think the customer feedback is so critical.
Facility to manage all of the customer feedback and the data that's been shared amongst the different outlets?
Yeah, I mean, every franchisee in our business has access to the customer feedback every day. So it's very much driving what we're doing. But I think it's understanding, but it's also having that broad purview that I talked about against one of the other slides. And I think the fantastic thing about being in the multi-site business is you just wander in. As I say, I'm going to the US. I've been into 2 fast casual places in the US last year. I'm going to a Domino's version this year. So I'm always looking and going in and seeing and experiencing. And I think that way you just stay in touch with what's happening.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you to all of this. Oh, sorry, there's the question. Another one here.
Hi, sorry, David Cronin from Kerry Foods. Ciara, my question's for you. Just on, you mentioned entering China and how the consumers aren't aware of how to use butter. How do you educate consumers on the usage occasions that they mightn't be used to? And then also, what role would digital have in entering new markets that may not be aware of Kerrygold?
Yeah, I mean, China is, for those of you who are trying to play in that category, a really challenging environment to try and play in. And we have tried, we have been in the category for probably about 5 years now within butter and cheese. It's mainly really the kind of the expat environment that are buying into it and that are engaging in our brand. And through word of mouth, we have a more domestic interaction or engagement from Chinese consumers. So it's at the moment through the word of mouth initially. Clearly online is a significant role for us in China. We've just bought another retail outlet option for ourselves to go through Tmall out there, which is really a significant way in which the consumer engages with the category in China. I mean, for those of you who are familiar, you know, before they buy a new brand, and you really have to see this to believe it. In their, you know, these are middle-income consumers who are in a fairly modest home. They will always have a laptop in the middle of the sitting room, and they will sit down and review a brand before they engage in it. And that's a brand within dairy, within milk, you know, and it has to have a certain amount of reviews before they engage in it. So it's critical that we get our brand story correct online, in particular for that consumer, so that they can really understand and that they really can relate to our sustainability story, our heritage, because we all know, the food scandals over there are really close to their heart and to their minds. And we need to ensure that our brand promise is well understood, but that they can engage with us in a way that they feel that trust and that heritage in a local fashion. And clearly, as I mentioned, they've no idea where Ireland is. They think it's over in New Zealand. So it's establishing that kind of, well, how can we get into that? And so we talk about the Garden of Europe, because Europe is somewhere that they're familiar with. It is that established equity that has strong and stringent regulations and quality products, and they want to be part of that.
Thanks very much. The pizzas have landed, so I'd just like to thank our speakers. We always like to celebrate Irish brands, and we had 3 great brands to celebrate tonight with Kerrygold, Whelan and Keelings. But we also need to share global knowledge, which is why Bord Bia asked David Weil to come over, and I think he has done that magnificently. So I'd like you to thank all the speakers, and hang on. Now, please stay for food and drink, pizza and drink, and there are 2 brand gifts from Kerrygold and Keelings to take home. 1 for everybody in the audience. Don't take 2.